The rain fell like judgment from the blackened sky, each drop a reminder that Vivian Hart's carefully constructed world was drowning. Her Louboutin heels clicked frantically against wet concrete as she ran, the sound swallowed by thunder rolling overhead. Behind her, she heard his voice cutting through the storm, sharp with rage and entitlement. "Vivian, you're making a mistake." Cameron Brooks, her business partner, the man who'd smiled beside her in magazine spreads and shareholder meetings, the man who'd proposed marriage 3 months ago over champagne and contracts, the man who'd revealed his true nature tonight when she'd refused to sign away control of her biotech patents. Her ankle twisted violently as she turned down a narrow alley, seeking escape. The laptop bag clutched to her chest contained everything: financial records, encrypted files, proof of his systematic fraud. 3 years of stolen innovations, forged signatures, diverted funds. She discovered it all tonight, piecing together the puzzle while he thought she was celebrating at the gala. Pain exploded through her leg as she collapsed onto the grimy pavement. The white evening gown she'd worn to the charity auction now clung to her body, transparent and ruined. Rain mixed with tears on her face as she tried to stand, but her ankle refused. It buckled, sending her crashing down again. She heard footsteps approaching, slow and deliberate. Cameron emerged from the shadows, his tuxedo jacket open, his usually perfect hair plastered to his forehead. In the dim light from a distant street lamp, his handsome face looked monstrous. "Please," Vivian gasped, dragging herself backward against the brick wall. "Don't hurt me. I can't walk." Cameron crouched down, his smile cold. "Then stop trying to run." That's when she heard other voices, lighter ones. A child's curious question carried on the wind. "Daddy, why is that lady on the ground?" Nathan Rivers had taken the shortcut through the alley 1,000 times. It connected the grocery store to his apartment building, saving precious minutes on nights when Ruby was tired and hungry. Tonight, his 6-year-old daughter rode piggyback, her small arms wrapped around his neck, her purple backpack bumping against his shoulders. He'd spent the day fixing washing machines in basement laundromats and cramped apartment kitchens. His hands still smelled like detergent and rust. Ruby's daycare had called twice because he'd been running late. The weight of single parenthood pressed on his shoulders more heavily than usual tonight. Then he heard it. A woman's voice, raw with terror. Nathan stopped so abruptly that Ruby tightened her grip. "Daddy?" "Shh, sweetheart." He lowered her gently to the ground behind him. "Stay right here. Don't move." The scene before him crystallized in an instant. A woman on the ground, soaked and injured, her face streaked with mascara and fear. A man looming over her, aggression radiating from every line of his expensive suit. Nathan had spent 7 years as a paramedic before Ruby was born. He'd seen domestic violence, corporate intimidation, power imbalances played out in emergency rooms and accident scenes. He recognized predatory body language when he saw it. "Step away from her." His voice came out low, steady, carrying the authority of someone who'd talked down armed suspects and calmed panicking crowds. Right now, Cameron straightened, irritation flashing across his features. "This is a private matter. Walk away." "Can't do that." Nathan moved forward, his boots splashing through puddles. "The lady asked you to leave her alone. So leave." For a moment, Cameron seemed to consider pushing back, his hands clenched in 2 fists. But something in Nathan's eyes, that calm, immovable certainty, born from years of facing down danger, made him reconsider. "This isn't over." "Vivian," Cameron spat before turning and disappearing into the rain, and knelt beside the trembling woman. Up close, he could see the purple swelling around her ankle, the way she protected the laptop bag like it contained her soul. Her green eyes met his, wide with shock and disbelief. "You're safe now," he said quietly. "I'm Nathan. Can you stand?" She shook her head, fresh tears spilling over. "My ankle. I think it's broken." Ruby appeared beside him, ignoring his earlier instruction to stay put. She stared at the woman with solemn curiosity, then reached into her backpack and pulled out a small pack of tissues. "Here," Ruby said, offering them with both hands. "Crying makes your nose run. My daddy says tissues help." Vivian took them with shaking hands, a sound between a laugh and a sob escaping her throat. "Thank you," she whispered. Nathan assessed the situation quickly. The woman needed medical attention, but she was clearly terrified. Calling an ambulance might bring questions she wasn't ready to answer. The hospital would involve police reports, records that could be traced. "My apartment is 2 blocks from here," he said. "I can look at that ankle, get you warm and dry. Then we figure out next steps. Does that work?" Vivian stared at him, searching his face for hidden motives, for the trap she'd been trained to expect. But she found only genuine concern and quiet competence. "Why would you help me?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Because you need help," Nathan replied simply. "And because nobody should be left in the rain." He lifted her carefully, one arm beneath her knees, the other supporting her back. She weighed almost nothing, fragile despite her height. Ruby gathered the fallen laptop bag and slung it over her small shoulder with determined importance. As they left the alley behind, Vivian rested her head against Nathan's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. For the first time in years, she felt something she'd forgotten existed: safety. Nathan's apartment occupied the 3rd floor of a building that had seen better decades. The elevator groaned and shuddered as it carried them upward, its fluorescent light flickering intermittently. Vivian kept her eyes closed, focusing on breathing through the pain radiating from her ankle. Ruby hummed softly beside them, still clutching the laptop bag like a sacred treasure. The apartment door opened to reveal a space that was small but immaculately kept. Mismatched furniture spoke of thrift stores and careful budgeting, but everything was clean, organized, lived in with intention. Children's drawings covered one entire wall, a gallery of crayon masterpieces held up with colorful tape. The scent of laundry detergent and something vanilla hung in the air. Nathan carried Vivian to the couch, a sagging brown thing that had probably been nice 20 years ago. He settled her gently onto the cushions, then immediately moved to grab pillows and blankets from a nearby closet. "Ruby, can you get the first aid kit from the bathroom?" he asked. "The one with the red cross on it." "On it, Daddy." Ruby darted away, her wet shoes squeaking on the linoleum. Vivian watched Nathan work with quiet efficiency. He positioned pillows beneath her injured ankle, elevating it carefully. His hands were calloused but gentle, moving with practiced precision. When Ruby returned with the medical kit, he thanked her seriously, treating her contribution as vital. "I'm going to remove your shoe," Nathan said, making eye contact with Vivian. "It's going to hurt." "I'll be as careful as I can," she nodded, bracing herself. The pain that shot through her leg as he eased off the designer heel made her gasp, but Nathan's steady presence kept her grounded. He worked methodically, cutting away her ruined stocking to expose the swollen flesh beneath. "Not broken," he announced, after gentle probing. "Severely sprained. You're going to be off this foot for a while." Ruby appeared at Vivian's shoulder, studying her with intense curiosity. "Are you a princess?" she asked suddenly. "You're wearing a fancy dress." Despite everything, Vivian found herself smiling. "Not a princess. Just someone who made some bad choices about who to trust." "My mommy made a bad choice too," Ruby said matter-of-factly. "She chose cancer instead of staying with us. Daddy says she didn't really choose it, but that's what it feels like." The simple honesty of it struck Vivian like a physical blow. She looked at Nathan, who'd paused in wrapping her ankle with compression bandages. His jaw tightened slightly, but he didn't scold Ruby for the comment. "Your daddy's right," Vivian said softly. "Sometimes bad things happen that nobody chooses, but we survive them anyway." "Did a bad thing happen to you tonight?" Ruby asked. "Yes, but your daddy helped me." "That was a very good thing." Nathan finished securing the bandage and stood. "Ruby, go change into dry pajamas. Then you can have hot chocolate if you want. Can the pretty lady have some too?" "If she wants it, yes." Ruby scampered off to her room, leaving the 2 adults in contemplative silence. Vivian pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders, suddenly aware of how exposed she felt in the damp, transparent gown. "I have some clothes that might fit you," Nathan said, reading her discomfort. "My wife was about your height. I kept some things. Never could bring myself to donate them all." 20 minutes later, Vivian emerged from the small bathroom wearing soft flannel pajamas that smelled like lavender detergent. They were well worn but clean, warm against her chilled skin. Her wet hair hung in waves down her back, and her face, scrubbed clean of makeup, looked younger, more vulnerable. When she returned to the living room, she found Nathan in the kitchen making hot chocolate, while Ruby sat at a small table covered in art supplies. The domestic scene felt surreal after the violence and terror of the evening. "Sit here," Ruby commanded, patting the chair beside her. "I'm making you something." Vivian lowered herself carefully into the chair, keeping her injured foot elevated on a stool Nathan quickly provided. She watched as Ruby selected crayons with deliberate care, her small tongue poking out in concentration. Nathan brought 3 mugs of hot chocolate, each topped with a precise arrangement of mini marshmallows. He sat across from them, his own mug warming his hands as he observed quietly. "What are you drawing?" Vivian asked Ruby. "You'll see when I'm done." No peeking. They sat in comfortable silence, broken only by the scratch of crayons on paper and the occasional rumble of pipes in the walls. Outside, the rain had softened to a gentle patter. The city's usual chaos felt distant, muffled. Vivian sipped her hot chocolate and felt something inside her chest unclench. For years, she'd inhabited glass towers and leather-upholstered boardrooms, spaces designed to intimidate and impress. She'd worn power suits like armor and scheduled her life in 15-minute increments. Every interaction had been a negotiation, every relationship transactional. But here, in this cramped apartment with peeling wallpaper and a broken blind on one window, she felt more human than she had in a decade. "Why did you help me?" she asked Nathan suddenly. "You don't know me. I could be dangerous." Nathan met her gaze steadily. "Could have left you there too. But that's not who I choose to be. Most people would have walked past. Most people didn't see what I saw." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I spent 7 years pulling people out of bad situations. Car accidents, fires, medical emergencies. You learn to recognize when someone's reached their breaking point. You were there tonight." "I was," Vivian admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I was strong, thought I could handle anything. Built an entire company from nothing, survived in an industry designed to destroy women who speak up. But tonight, when he grabbed me, when I realized how alone I really was," she trailed off, unable to finish. Ruby looked up from her drawing. "You're not alone now. You have us." The simple declaration, delivered with such certainty by a 6-year-old, broke something open in Vivian. Tears spilled down her cheeks before she could stop them. She covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Nathan stood and moved to her side, crouching down so they were eye level. He didn't touch her, didn't offer empty platitudes. He simply stayed present, a steady anchor in her storm. "It's okay to fall apart," he said quietly. "That's what safe spaces are for." When Vivian finally looked up, her eyes red and swollen, Ruby was holding out her finished drawing. 3 figures stood in front of a simple house. A tall man with brown hair, a small girl with curly pigtails, and between them, an empty outline of a woman. "This is our family," Ruby explained. "Daddy, me, and the space where someone special goes. I've been drawing it for a long time, but I never knew who belonged there." She looked at Vivian with absolute seriousness. "I think maybe it's supposed to be you." Vivian took the drawing with trembling hands. The crayon strokes were uneven, childish, but the meaning behind them was profound. This little girl, who'd lost her mother to cancer, was offering a place of belonging to a complete stranger. "Ruby," Vivian whispered, "that's the most beautiful gift anyone has ever given me." Nathan placed a gentle hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Time for bed, kiddo. Big day tomorrow." "But what about the lady?" "She'll be here in the morning, I promise." Ruby hugged Vivian carefully, mindful of her injured ankle, then allowed her father to lead her to the small bedroom they shared. Vivian could hear their nighttime ritual through the thin walls. Nathan's low voice reading a story, Ruby's sleepy questions, the soft click of a nightlight being turned on. When Nathan returned, he found Vivian still holding the drawing, tears streaming silently down her face. "I don't deserve this kindness," she said. "You don't even know who I am." Don't need to know who you were, Nathan replied, settling into the chair across from her. I know who you are right now. Someone who's hurting. Someone who needs help. That's enough. They talked late into the night, voices low so as not to wake Ruby. Vivian told him about building Heart Biotech from the ground up, about the patents she'd developed for revolutionary medical devices, about Cameron's slow infiltration into her company and her life. She told him about discovering the fraud, about the confrontation that had turned violent. Nathan listened without judgment, asking clarifying questions, but never interrogating. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. What do you want to do? He finally asked. I don't know, Vivian admitted. Part of me wants to fight back, expose everything, destroy him the way he tried to destroy me. But another part just wants to disappear. Both are valid choices. What would you do? Nathan considered carefully. I ask myself which choice lets me sleep at night. Which one makes me someone Ruby would be proud to know? That question settled into Vivian's chest, heavy and true. She looked around the small apartment, at the crayon drawings on the walls, at the photo on the mantle showing Nathan, Ruby, and a beautiful woman with kind eyes, who must have been his wife. Can I stay here tonight? She asked. Just tonight. Tomorrow I'll figure everything out. Stay as long as you need, Nathan said. Couch is yours. He brought her extra blankets, made sure she had water and pain medication within reach, then retreated to the bedroom he shared with Ruby. Vivian lay in the darkness, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of this strange new sanctuary. For the first time in years, she felt safe enough to truly rest. Morning arrived with unexpected softness. Sunlight filtered through worn curtains, casting golden rectangles across the floor. Vivian woke to the smell of coffee and something sweet baking in the oven. For a disoriented moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then the previous night crashed back. The rain, the terror, Nathan's strong arms carrying her to safety. She sat up carefully, testing her ankle. Still swollen, still painful, but bearable. In the kitchen, Nathan stood at the stove flipping pancakes, while Ruby set the small table with mismatched plates and cheerful determination. They moved around each other with practiced choreography, a dance perfected through years of just the two of them. Good morning, Vivian called out softly. Ruby's face lit up. You're awake. Daddy's making pancakes. They're a little lumpy, but they taste good if you use enough syrup. Hey now, Nathan protested with mock offense. My pancakes are perfectly acceptable. They're acceptable. Lumpy, Ruby agreed diplomatically. Vivian found herself laughing, genuine and unreserved. When had she last laughed like that? Breakfast at Heart Biotech had been protein shakes consumed during conference calls. Lunch was working meetings. Dinner often skipped entirely. Nathan brought her coffee without asking how she took it, then returned with cream and sugar so she could adjust it herself. The small gesture, giving her choice and control after a night where she'd had none, meant everything. They ate together at the small table, Ruby chattering about her upcoming school project on butterflies, Nathan listening with complete attention, despite probably hearing about butterflies for the 100th time. Vivian observed their dynamic, the easy affection, the mutual respect between father and daughter. What do you do for work, Ruby? Asked Vivian suddenly. Are you a doctor? You look smart, like a doctor. I'm a scientist, Vivian explained. I create medical devices that help sick people get better. Ruby's eyes widened. Like magic? Like magic, but with science. That's the best kind of magic, Ruby declared with absolute certainty. After breakfast, Nathan insisted on rewrapping Vivian's ankle properly. She sat on the couch while he knelt before her, his touch clinical but warm. He worked with the confidence of someone who'd done this countless times, his fingers locating pressure points and adjusting the compression with practiced precision. You were a paramedic, Vivian said, not quite a question. 7 years. Worked emergency response, mostly trauma calls. Saw the worst moments of people's lives, tried to give them a chance at more moments. Why did you stop? His hands paused briefly. Ruby was 3 when Maria got her diagnosis. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. I took leave to care for them both, but after Maria died, he cleared his throat. Emergency response requires split-second decisions, absolute focus. I couldn't trust myself anymore. Kept seeing Maria's face in every patient. So I found work that let me be present for Ruby, set my own hours, come home every night. Washing machine repair, Vivian said, remembering what he'd mentioned. Pays enough. Keeps me close to home. Lets me be the parent Ruby deserves. He finished securing the bandage and sat back. Not glamorous, but it's honest. Vivian thought about her corner office, her executive assistant, her chauffeur-driven car, all the trappings of success that had left her terrified and alone in a rain-soaked alley. I think, she said carefully, that you might be the most successful person I've ever met. Nathan looked surprised, then smiled. Tell that to my landlord when rent's due. The morning drifted into afternoon. Nathan had repair appointments scheduled, but he called and rescheduled them, and willing to leave Vivian alone while she was still disoriented and injured. Instead, they existed in comfortable domesticity. Ruby set up an art station at the coffee table, determined to create a masterpiece. She conscripted Vivian as her assistant, having her hold papers and select colors and provide dramatic commentary on each creative decision. This blue, Ruby announced, holding up a cerulean crayon, the color of hope. Miss Tessa at school taught us that. Miss Tessa sounds wise, Vivian said. She is. She says colors have feelings. Red is angry, but also love. Yellow is happy, but also scared. Green is grower. We studied Vivian thoughtfully. What color are you? Vivian considered the question with unexpected seriousness. I think right now I'm gray. Like storm clouds. Confused and heavily nodded sagely. But storm clouds bring rain, and rain makes flowers grow. So maybe gray isn't bad. Maybe it's just waiting to become something beautiful. The wisdom from the 6-year-old child struck Vivian silent. She watched Ruby return to her drawing, adding swirls of gray that transformed into silver, then white, then pale purple. There, Ruby said, satisfied. The storm is turning into morning. That evening, after Ruby was tucked into bed with her favorite stuffed animals arranged just so, Nathan and Vivian sat on the narrow balcony that overlooked the street. The city hummed below them, car horns and distant music, and the particular energy of lives being lived in close proximity. I need to call someone, Vivian said, clutching the phone Nathan had let her borrow. My lawyer, board of directors. Someone who can help me figure out the legal ramifications of what Cameron did. Do you trust them? Nathan asked. The question stopped her. Did she? Her lawyer worked for the company. Her board members had business relationships with Cameron. The entire corporate ecosystem was interconnected. Compromise. No, she admitted. I don't think I trust any of them. Then maybe don't call yet. Give yourself time to think clearly before you make moves that can't be undone. It was sound advice, but Vivian felt the weight of responsibility pressing on her. I can't hide here forever. I have a company, employees who depend on me, patents that Cameron will try to steal if I don't act fast. What's more important? Nathan asked gently. Protecting your company or protecting yourself? They're the same thing. I am Heart Biotech. I built it from nothing. Are you? Or did you build Heart Biotech to prove something? To become someone worthy of what? Love? Respect? Safety? The words hit like surgical strikes, exposing truths Vivian had buried under years of ambition and achievement. She'd founded her company at 24, desperate to prove she was more than the damaged daughter of an alcoholic father and a mother who'd abandoned them both. Every patent, every successful product launch, every magazine cover had been another brick in the wall she'd built between herself and that frightened girl. I don't know who I am without it, she whispered. Nathan reached over and took her hand, his grip warm and steady. Maybe that's what you need to figure out before you decide what to fight for. They sat in silence, hands linked, watching the city lights flicker on one by one as darkness settled over the streets below. Vivian felt something shifting inside her, old certainties crumbling, new possibilities emerging from the rubble. Tell me about Maria, she said softly. Nathan was quiet for a long moment. She was a kindergarten teacher. Loved her job more than anything except Ruby. She used to say that every child deserved to feel like the most important person in the room at least once a day. He smiled sadly. She made that happen. Kids would do anything for her approval, and she gave it freely. Ruby has her kindness, she does. That's Maria's greatest legacy. Not the life insurance or the photo albums, but the way Ruby sees the world, with openness and generosity. You taught her that too, Vivian said. The way you opened your door to a stranger, the way you didn't ask questions or demand explanations. That's not common. Maybe it should be. Vivian squeezed his hand. Thank you for everything. I know I keep saying it, but I mean it. You saved my life last night. You'll save your own life, Nathan replied. I just gave you a safe place to catch your breath. That night, Vivian lay on the couch, wrapped in blankets that smelled like fabric softener and something indefinably Nathan. Her laptop sat on the coffee table, still unopened, filled with evidence that could destroy Cameron's career and reputation. She thought about revenge, about justice, about rebuilding her empire, but mostly she thought about Ruby's drawing, about the empty space waiting to be filled, about what it might mean to belong somewhere, not because of what she'd achieved, but simply because of who she was. For the first time in her adult life, Vivian fell asleep without a 5-year plan, without quarterly projections, without the weight of proving herself to the world. She simply slept. The illusion of sanctuary shattered on the 4th morning. Vivian woke to the sound of car doors slamming, voices raised in urgent conversation. She limped to the window, pulling the curtain aside carefully. 3 black sedans lined the curb outside Nathan's building. Men and women in expensive suits clustered on the sidewalk, some speaking into phones, others consulting tablets. A news van had pulled up behind them, a reporter checking her makeup in a compact mirror. Vivian's stomach dropped. They'd found her. Nathan emerged from the bedroom, Woody still sleeping behind the closed door. He took one look at Vivian's face and moved to the window, his jaw tightening as he assessed the scene below. Friends of yours? He asked quietly. Board members, legal team, and apparently media. Vivian pressed her forehead against the cool glass. I should have known they'd track the laptop's GPS. You want me to tell them to leave? It won't matter. They'll wait. Or they'll come up. She turned to face him. I'm sorry. I brought this to your door. Before Nathan could respond, his phone rang. He answered, listened for a moment, then hung up with a sigh. Building manager. Says there are corporate lawyers in the lobby demanding to speak with you, threatening legal action if he doesn't grant them access. Let them up, Vivian said, her voice steadying. Better to face this now than let it escalate. Ruby appeared in the doorway, ripping sleep from her eyes. Why is it so loud outside? Nathan scooped her up. Some people need to talk to Miss Vivian about work stuff. It might get a little intense, but everything's okay. Will the bad man from the alley be there? Ruby asked, suddenly alert. No, sweetheart. Just some people in suits. The knock on the door came 5 minutes later, sharp and authoritative. Nathan opened it to reveal a woman in her 50s wearing a charcoal designer suit and an expression of profound irritation. Vivian, the woman said, pushing past Nathan without invitation. 4 days. 4 days you've been missing. And the company is in absolute chaos. Hello, Patricia, Vivian replied coolly, not moving from the couch. How did you find me? Patricia Whitmore, CFO of Heart Biotech and Vivian's oldest colleague, gestured impatiently. Your laptop, obviously. We've been trying to reach you. Your phone is off, your penthouse is empty, and Cameron has been spreading some very concerning stories about your mental state. Has he now? 2 more people entered. A lawyer Vivian recognized and a man she didn't know wearing an earpiece and what was probably a concealed weapon. Security, then. They were treating her like a flight risk. Ruby pressed closer to Nathan, suddenly nervous. Vivian caught her eye and offered a reassuring smile. Patricia finally seemed to notice her surroundings, her nose wrinkling slightly as she took in the modest apartment. What are you doing here, Vivian? In this place? Recovering, Vivian said simply. I had an accident. Accident. Patricia's tone made it clear. She didn't believe that for a second. Cameron said you attacked him at the gala, that you stole company property. that you were having some kind of breakdown. Cameron is a liar and a thief, Vivian replied, her voice sharp as broken glass. And if you've been working with him in my absence, Patricia, I suggest you reconsider your allegiances. The lawyer, Martin Cheswick, stepped forward. Miss Hart, we need you to return to headquarters immediately. There are contracts that require your signature, decisions that can't wait, and frankly, your prolonged absence is damaging shareholder confidence. Let it damage. I beg your pardon? Vivian stood carefully, her injured ankle, supported by the brace Nathan had fashioned from medical supplies. Despite wearing borrowed sweatpants and an oversized sweater, despite her unwashed hair and bare face, she radiated the authority that had built a multi-million-dollar company. I said, let it damage. Shareholder confidence is built on quarterly earnings and market speculation. It has nothing to do with actual innovation or the value we bring to healthcare. Patricia exchanged glances with the lawyer. Vivian, you're not making sense. The board is concerned about your capacity to lead right now. Concerned? Vivian laughed bitterly. Where was the board's concern when Cameron was embezzling research funds? When he was selling our unreleased patents to competitors? When he systematically undermined every female executive until I was the only one left? Silence fell over the room. Patricia's expression shifted from irritation to calculation. You have proof of these allegations? I have mountains of proof. Financial records, encrypted emails, testimony from engineers he bribed. It's all on that laptop you so conveniently tracked. Nathan had been standing quietly by the door, Ruby in his arms. Now, he spoke up. I think it's time for you folks to leave. Patricia turned to him as if noticing him for the first time. And you are? The person asking you to leave his home. We're not done here. Yeah, you are. Nathan's voice carried the same quiet authority Vivian had heard in the alley. Vivian doesn't want to talk right now. Come back when she's ready. The security guard moved forward, but Patricia held up a hand. She was calculating, Vivian could see it. Calculating the optics of forcibly removing a CEO from what appeared to be a domestic situation. Calculating how it would play in the press, already gathering outside. Fine, Patricia said. But, Vivian, we need answers. The board meets in 48 hours. If you're not there, if you don't address these allegations properly, they will vote to remove you as CEO based on medical incapacity. Cameron has already laid the groundwork. After they left, the apartment felt too small, too exposed. Vivian sank onto the couch, her hands trembling. Ruby climbed up beside her, cuddling close. I don't like those people, Ruby announced. They have mean eyes. Some of them used to be my friends, Vivian said softly. Then they weren't very good friends. Nathan made tea, his movements methodical and calming. He brought Vivian a steaming mug, then sat across from her, waiting patiently for her to speak. I have to go back, Vivian finally said. If I don't fight this, Cameron wins everything. He gets the company, the patents, the ability to profit from my work while destroying my reputation. What do you want? Nathan asked. Not what you should do. What do you want? Vivian looked around the small apartment, at Ruby's drawings on the walls, at the breakfast dishes still in the sink, at the simple warmth of a home built on love rather than achievement. She thought about the past for days, about healing both physically and emotionally in this unexpected sanctuary. I want to stay here, she admitted. I want more mornings of lumpy pancakes and art projects. I want to figure out who I am when I'm not performing success. But I can't. Not yet. Not until I finish this. Nathan nodded slowly. Then we help you finish it. We? You think I'm letting you walk into that corporate Shark Tank alone? With a sprained ankle and no backup? He smiled. Besides, Ruby's been practicing her intimidating stare. Haven't you, sweetheart? Ruby demonstrated, scrunching up her face in an expression that was more adorable than threatening. Despite everything, Vivian laughed. I can't ask you to do this. It's not your fight. You're not asking. We're offering. Nathan's expression turned serious. You gave us something these past few days, Vivian. You showed Ruby that people can be strong and vulnerable at the same time. You showed me that opening my door was the right choice. Let us return the favor. That evening, They planned her return like a military operation. Vivian went through the files on her laptop, building an irrefutable case against Cameron. Nathan listened, asking sharp questions that helped her organize her evidence. Ruby contributed by drawing battle maps of the office building, declaring that every hero needed a strategy. Cameron will try to control the narrative, Vivian explained. He'll paint me as unstable, emotional, vindictive. Classic tactics used against women in power. Then don't play his game, Nathan suggested. Don't be emotional or vindictive. Be factual. Let the evidence speak. And if that's not enough, then you walk away knowing you fought with integrity. That's worth more than any company. Vivian studied him in the lamplight, this man who becomes so important so quickly. When did you get so wise? When I realized that keeping Ruby safe and happy was more important than anything else. Perspective changes everything. As the night deepened, Vivian felt her resolve crystallizing. She would return to Heart Biotech, face the board, present her evidence. She would fight, not because she needed to prove herself, but because corruption shouldn't go unchallenged. And regardless of the outcome, she would do it on her terms. Before sleep, Ruby insisted on braiding Vivian's hair. Warriors need their hair out of their face, she explained solemnly. Her small fingers worked carefully, creating an uneven but heartfelt braid. There, Ruby said, tying it off with a sparkly scrunchie. Now, you look brave. Vivian pulled Ruby into a hug. I feel brave. Because of you and your daddy. That night, wrapped in blankets on the familiar couch, Vivian slept without nightmares. Tomorrow would bring confrontation and difficult truths. But tonight, she was surrounded by people who'd chosen her without conditions, and that made all the difference. The boardroom of Heart Biotech occupied the 20th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. Vivian had always loved this room, the way it made her feel on top of the world. Now, it felt like a glass cage. She entered with Nathan beside her and Ruby holding her hand. The entire board fell silent, shock rippling through the assembled executives. Cameron sat at the head of the table, her seat, his expression flickering between surprise and calculated concern. Vivian, he said, standing with theatrical worry. Thank God you're all right. We've all been so concerned. Save it, Cameron. Vivian moved to the front of the room, Nathan and Ruby finding seats along the wall. She connected her laptop to the display system with steady hands. Patricia spoke up from her seat. Vivian, this is highly irregular. Board meetings don't allow guests. Nathan Rivers and his daughter Ruby are here as my personal support. Vivian replied crisply. Given that this meeting will likely determine my future with this company, I'm invoking my right to have witnesses present. Or would the board prefer I bring my lawyer instead? Murmured consultation, then reluctant agreement. Vivian pulled up the first document, financial records showing systematic fund diversions. For the past 18 months, approximately $4.7 million in research funding has been redirected to shell companies owned by Cameron Brooks. The money was used to purchase patents from failing startups, which were then sold to our competitors at a substantial markup. Cameron laughed dismissively. That's creative accounting, Vivian, not theft. Those were legitimate business investments. Investments that you profited from personally while Heart Biotech received nothing. She pulled up more documents. Here are the email chains showing you negotiating sales of our proprietary technology before the patents were even filed. And here, she clicked to a new screen, are the contracts you forged with my signature to approve these transactions. The room erupted in conversation. Board members scrolled through the evidence on their tablets, expressions shifting from skepticism to concerned outrage. Cameron's smugness began to crack. This is fabricated, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. She's been unstable, hiding for days. She probably created these documents during her breakdown. Breakdown? Vivian's voice cut through the noise. Is that what you're calling it when you tried to force me to sign over my patents, then pursued me through the streets when I refused? When you cornered me in an alley, and would have done God knows what if a decent man hadn't intervened? You're delusional, am I? Vivian pulled up security footage from the hotel, showing Cameron grabbing her wrist, her pulling away, running. This is from the gala. Time-stamped, authenticated by the hotel's security system, the board members watched in uncomfortable silence as the footage played. Cameron's attorney whispered urgently in his ear. From his seat along the wall, Nathan watched Vivian with quiet pride. This was the woman she'd been before fear and manipulation had cornered her in that alley. Strong, brilliant, uncompromising. But there was something else now too. Groundedness that hadn't existed before. She wasn't fighting to prove her worth. She was fighting because it was right. Patricia cleared her throat. Cameron, do you have a response to these allegations? I have legal counsel preparing a full rebuttal, but I think the more pressing question is whether the board wants to bet the company's future on someone who's clearly been compromised. Look at her, hiding in some low-rent apartment with a stranger, bringing a child to a board meeting. This is not the behavior of a stable CEO. Vivian felt anger flash hot in her chest, but she remembered Nathan's advice. Don't be emotional. Be factual. You're right, she said calmly. My behavior has been unusual. I sought refuge with strangers after you attacked me. I prioritized my physical and mental health over corporate expectations. I recognized that I needed help and accepted it from people who offered it without conditions. She paused. If the board considers that evidence of instability rather than wisdom, then perhaps I'm not the right leader for this company after all. The room went still. Cameron leaned back, sensing victory. But Vivian wasn't finished. However, before you make that decision, consider this. Heart Biotech was built on the principle that healthcare should be accessible, innovative, and ethical. Under Cameron's influence, we've strayed from that mission. We've prioritized profit over patience, secrecy over transparency, and personal gain over collective good. She clicked to a new slide, showing patient testimonials, research projects that had been shelved, promising treatments that never made it to market because they weren't profitable enough. This is what we've lost, she said softly. The heart of what we're supposed to be doing. And I take responsibility for that. I was so focused on growth and success that I stopped asking if we were growing in the right direction. Ruby stood up suddenly, walking to the front of the room. Nathan half rose to stop her, but Vivian gestured that it was okay. My daddy says, Ruby announced to the boardroom full of executives, that being important isn't about being big or having money. It's about being kind and helping people. She looked up at Vivian. Miss Vivian helps people. She makes medicine. Magic. That's really important. The simplicity of it, delivered by a 6-year-old in light-up sneakers, cut through all the corporate posturing. Several board members smiled despite themselves. Vivian knelt beside Ruby. Thank you, sweetheart. She stood, facing the board one final time. I'm formally resigning as CEO of Heart Biotech. Effective immediately. Patricia, you'll serve as interim leadership while the board conducts a search for my replacement. I'm maintaining my patents and my shares, but I'm stepping away from operational control. Vivian, wait. Patricia started. I'm not finished. Vivian continued, her voice steady and clear. I'm also filing a formal complaint with the SEC regarding Cameron's fraudulent activities. All evidence has been submitted to federal investigators. This isn't about revenge or corporate politics. It's about accountability. Cameron shot to his feet. You'll regret this, Vivian. I'll bury you in lawsuits. I'll destroy your reputation so completely that no one will ever work with you again. Vivian replied calmly. But I'll sleep at night. Can you say the same? The meeting dissolved into chaos. Cameron stormed out with his legal team. Board members huddled in urgent conversations. Patricia approached Vivian with an expression that mixed respect and regret. You didn't have to resign, Patricia said quietly. We could have removed Cameron, restructured, kept you on, I know. But I need to step away. Not because I'm running, but because I'm choosing something different. Vivian glanced at Nathan and Ruby. I'm choosing a life that doesn't require me to prove my worth every single day. Patricia followed her gaze and nodded slowly. I understand. For what it's worth, you built something extraordinary here. Don't forget that. I won't. But it's time for someone else to carry it forward. As they left the building, reporters swarmed with cameras and microphones. Vivian held Ruby's hand on one side, Nathan's on the other, and walked through the chaos with her head high. She answered no questions, offered no statements. She simply walked forward. 3 months later, the city looked different in autumn light. Golden leaves scattered across sidewalks, and the air carried the crisp promise of winter approaching. Vivian stood in front of a renovated brownstone, a hand-painted sign hanging above the door. Ruby's Garden, a safe haven. The non-profit had opened its doors 2 weeks ago. Inside, women who'd fled corporate manipulation, domestic violence, and systematic abuse found temporary shelter, legal assistance, job training, and most importantly, community. Vivian had used her settlement from Heart Biotech, significant despite her resignation, to fund the project. Nathan had helped with renovations, his repair skills proving invaluable. Ruby had insisted on painting murals in every room, bright flowers and hopeful messages covering the walls. Everyone needs color when they're sad, she'd explained. Now, as Vivian unlocked the front door for the morning, she found 3 women already waiting on the steps. One clutched a small suitcase, her eyes hollow with exhaustion. Another held a sleeping toddler. The third was dressed in a business suit that had seen better days, her expression a mixture of shame and desperate hope. "Come in," Vivian said warmly, holding the door wide. "You're safe here." She guided them to the common room, where coffee was brewing and fresh pastries sat on the counter. Other residents emerged to help. Women who'd arrived weeks ago, and were now finding their footing, ready to support the newly arrived. This was Vivian's purpose now. Not quarterly earnings or patent approvals, but these small moments of offering sanctuary to people who'd reached their breaking point. Nathan arrived at noon with lunch, Ruby bouncing beside him with a folder full of new drawings. They'd moved into a larger apartment together 6 weeks ago, a slow, natural progression that felt inevitable rather than rushed. No grand proposals or dramatic declarations, just a quiet choosing of each other day after day. "Miss Vivian." Ruby ran to her, presenting a new artwork. "This is you planting flowers in someone's heart. See? The roots go deep." Vivian studied the drawing, tears pricking her eyes as they so often did now. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming fullness of a life lived with purpose and love. That evening, after the center had quieted and the residents were settled for the night, Vivian, Nathan, and Ruby sat in the small garden behind the building. They'd planted it together, vegetables and flowers mixed in glorious chaos. Ruby watered her tomato plants with serious concentration while Nathan and Vivian sat on the bench they'd built from reclaimed wood. "Do you ever regret it?" Nathan asked. "Walking away from everything you built?" Vivian considered the question, watching Ruby sing softly to the plants. "I didn't walk away from everything. I walked away from a life that was consuming me. But I walked toward this." She gestured at the garden, the building, Ruby's small form silhouetted against the sunset. "This is what I was supposed to build all along. I just had to lose everything else to see it." Nathan took her hand, calloused palm against calloused palm. They'd both worked hard to create this new life, scrubbing floors and painting walls and learning how to be partners in something bigger than themselves. "Ruby asked me something yesterday," Nathan said. "She wanted to know if you were her mom now, or if that was disrespectful to Maria." Vivian's breath caught. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that love doesn't replace love. That Maria would always be her mom, the one who gave her life. But that families can grow, and hearts can hold more than one person." He turned to face Vivian. "I told her that if she wanted to call you mom too, I thought that would be just fine." Tears spilled freely down Vivian's cheeks now. "Nathan, I'm not asking you to be Maria. I'm asking if you want to be you, with us officially. Ruby drew it months ago, remember? The space in the family that was waiting for someone who belonged." Vivian thought about that first drawing, the empty outline that Ruby had eventually filled with purple crayon and hope. She thought about the woman she'd been, terrified and broken in a rain-soaked alley. She thought about the woman she was now, strong in ways that had nothing to do with corporate titles. "Yes," she whispered. "I want to belong. I want this to be my family." Ruby ran over, somehow knowing without being told, that something important had happened. She climbed into Vivian's lap, dirty hands and all, and hugged her fiercely. "I knew it," Ruby said with satisfaction. "I knew you were supposed to be in our picture." They sat together as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. Around them, the city hummed with its endless energy. But in this small garden, time moved differently, softer, fuller. Vivian had spent her entire adult life chasing success, believing that achievement would finally make her worthy of love. But here, surrounded by rescued plants and a child's laughter and a man who'd seen her at her worst and chosen her anyway, she understood the truth. She'd never needed to earn belonging. She'd only needed to be brave enough to accept it. 6 months later, Ruby's garden had expanded to a second location. Vivian testified at Cameron's trial, her testimony calm and devastating. He was convicted on multiple counts of fraud and embezzlement. Heart Biotech, under new leadership, partnered with Ruby's garden to provide healthcare services to residents at no cost. Vivian occasionally consulted on medical device projects, her expertise still valuable, but her days were primarily spent at the center, working alongside women rebuilding their lives, teaching them that strength looked like asking for help, that success meant different things to different people. Nathan proposed on an ordinary Tuesday while they were washing dishes after dinner. No ring, no elaborate plan, just a quiet question asked while Ruby played with blocks in the next room. Vivian said yes before he'd finished asking. They married in the garden behind Ruby's garden, surrounded by residents and volunteers and the makeshift family they'd built. Ruby served as both flower girl and officiant. Her self-written ceremony, including a section about how families are like gardens, requiring love and attention and sunshine to grow. As Vivian stood beside Nathan, Ruby between them, holding both their hands, she felt completely, utterly at peace. The corporate world would continue without her. Patents would be filed, companies would rise and fall. Ambitious people would chase success with single-minded determination. But here, in this moment, with soil under her fingernails and love in her heart, Vivian had found something richer than any empire. She'd found home, and sometimes, home is exactly where you fall when everything else crumbles. Sometimes, the people who save you are the ones you'd never have met if your perfect life hadn't shattered. Sometimes the greatest success is measured not in achievements, but in the quiet moments of being seen, being chosen, being loved. Vivian Hart had been a CEO, a scientist, a powerful woman who'd commanded boardrooms and built an empire. Now, she was simply Vivian, partner to Nathan, mom to Ruby, gardener of hope for women who needed to remember their own strength. And that, she thought, as Ruby squeezed her hand and Nathan kissed her forehead, was more than enough. It was everything. Sometimes the life you think you want isn't the life you need. Sometimes falling apart is the first step to becoming whole. And sometimes, the greatest love stories begin in the darkest alleys. When one person decides to stop and help instead of walking by. This story is dedicated to everyone who's ever had to lose everything to find what truly matters. May you find your garden. May you find your family. May you find your home.